On May 2, 1945, Soviet troops pushed deeper into the ruins, their boots echoing through the concrete tunnels as they reached the final door, and confirmed not only the fall of the Third Reich, but the death of Adolf Hitler himself. For almost 80 years, the world believed the story ended there. A bunker sealed, a tyrant dead, a chapter closed. But in 2024, for the first time since the end of World War II, a team of modern experts was granted access to what remained underground. What they uncovered left even hardened investigators speechless. Among the team were French forensic researchers given unprecedented clearance to study physical fragments attributed to Hitler, including jaw parts and dentures preserved in Soviet archives. The match to Hitler's dental records was exact, but the records were just the beginning. What waited inside the bunker was far worse. The walls still stood, the air was still toxic, and the silence felt wrong, as if something inside had never stopped waiting. Beneath Berlin, hidden under meters of earth and broken concrete, sat the last fortress of the Nazi regime, a suffocating tomb built for a dictator who refused to face the world he destroyed. By early 1945, Berlin was turning into an inferno. Soviet army pressed in from the east, the Allies bombed from above, and the Third Reich, once obsessed with eternal domination, was choking on its final days. Hitler had already disappeared from public view, not metaphorically, literally. He had gone underground, into a concrete labyrinth engineered to keep him alive long after his nation died. The Führerbunker wasn't built as a shelter. It was a final command center, an underground citadel designed to withstand the collapse of everything above it. Construction began in 2 phases. 1936. The Führerbunker, a simple refuge under the Reich Chancellery. 1943. The Führerbunker, a deeper, thicker, more paranoid version built as the war spiraled out of control. Thousands of tons of concrete were poured by forced laborers, Soviet POWs, political prisoners, and men dragged from nearby camps. Food was scarce. Illness spread. Guards shot workers who slowed down. Hitler rarely visited the construction site, but when he did, the atmosphere froze. Engineers remembered the rage, explosive, unpredictable. One recalled Hitler slamming his fist on the blueprints when a wall was centimeters thinner than ordered, threatening to execute the architect if it wasn't fixed immediately. By the time it was finished, the bunker was a monstrous creation. 8 meters underground, 3.5 meters of solid reinforced concrete above. Narrow corridors sealed by steel blast doors. Independent generators. Its own water supply. Chemical toilets. Air filtration designed to resist gas attacks. Emergency exits, hidden hatches, escape routes. Hitler's personal quarters were small, suffocating rooms lined with plaster to reduce echo. No windows, no daylight, no sense of time. Just lamps, concrete, and the stench of sealed air. This wasn't a home. It was a coffin built in advance. Hitler moved into the bunker permanently in January 1945. The list of people trapped with him grows smaller each week. Joseph Goebbels, Martin Bormann, Eva Braun, several SS guards, secretaries, aides, and the rattling ghosts of an empire dying above their heads. Inside that shrinking world, Hitler gave orders to divisions that no longer existed. He screamed at generals who no longer had armies. He clung to maps that no longer reflected reality. The world outside was burning, but down in the bunker, he pretended he still controlled it. In April 1945, he dictated his final will. He married Eva Braun in a hurried midnight ceremony. And on April 30th, they killed themselves. Their bodies were dragged outside, splashed with fuel and set on fire, but only partially burned before Soviet artillery forced the remaining men to flee. When Soviet soldiers finally reached the bunker, they found only the aftermath: scattered belongings, bloodstains, silence, and history trying to bury itself. The Soviets tried to destroy the bunker in 1947. The explosions failed. East Germany covered it, built apartments over it, erased it from maps, banned all public references. For decades, the world believed the bunker was gone forever. But it wasn't. It was waiting, sealed in silence. When the war ended, the effort to erase Hitler's final refuge began immediately. In May 1945, Soviet teams swept the bunker. Officially, they were securing the site. In reality, they were removing and hiding everything they found. They photographed bloodstains, collected bone fragments, recovered documents, and removed boxes containing unknown materials. Then, silence. Soviet reports about Hitler's remains were inconsistent. Dates contradicted each other. Some details were erased, others were rewritten completely. Stalin himself refused to confirm Hitler's death, even though Soviet forensic teams had already identified his remains. Instead, Stalin told Truman and Churchill that Hitler may have escaped. Why? To manipulate the West? To fuel paranoia? To create confusion that only the Soviets could solve? Whatever the reason, it worked. Rumors exploded, sightings appeared everywhere. The myth of Hitler's escape to Spain, to Argentina, to Japan was born out of Soviet silence. The cover-up didn't end there. Soviet forces removed classified communications, coded files, and personal items, none of which were ever seen again. Some KGB officers remained stationed in Berlin solely to suppress anything related to the bunker. By the 1970s, East German authorities bulldozed what remained, buried the entrance, falsified maps, and banned academic study of the site entirely. What are they hiding? Became a question that echoed through generations. Because if nothing important was left, why all the secrecy? Why lock the past deeper underground? The bunker was sealed, but the rumors were not. From the first week Soviet troops entered the ruins, unsettling stories spread among soldiers like smoke drifting through a campfire. Some said that while clearing collapsed tunnels, they found human bones scattered in the rubble, bones that still carried scraps of military fabric clinging to them. Others whispered about smaller bones, bones that looked like they belonged to children. None of these claims ever appeared in official Soviet reports, but the whispers endured, shared quietly among veterans long after the war ended. Were these the forgotten dead of Berlin's final battle? Or evidence the Soviets intentionally concealed? The mystery deepened in the 1970s and 80s. East German construction workers, ordered to redevelop the neighborhood above the bunker, reported things that still haunt Berlin to this day. One worker described scratch marks covering sections of the walls, not from tools, but from fingernails dragging so hard they left faint trails of blood. He swore he saw words scratched into plaster: verloren, lost, Gnade, mercy. Another worker claimed he was ordered to seal an unlisted chamber, one that didn't appear on any blueprint. Inside, he saw candle stubs arranged in a circle and a dark stain on the floor that looked disturbingly like dried blood. When he reported it, the response was cold and immediate. Seal it. Forget it. And he did. They all did. For decades. Nearby residents later described hearing strange noises beneath the ground, muffled voices, distant banging, and sometimes what they swore sounded like screaming that vibrated up through the pavement at night. Officials dismissed it as superstition, but the people who lived there refused to walk near the site after dark. Historians who later studied these testimonies called the bunker a psychological sinkhole, a place so saturated with terror that even the earth seemed to carry the memory of suffering. Real or imagined, the legends built pressure, layer after layer, until finally the world demanded answers. 79 years later, the first descent into rotting history. It began with a hole barely wide enough for a drone. Beneath a cracked sidewalk near the old Reich chancellery, a small collapse revealed what might be an access shaft. After months of negotiation, Germany finally authorized a controlled scientific entry, but no one could go in. Not yet. The air inside had been trapped for almost 80 years. A robotic crawler went first, equipped with a 4K camera and chemical sensors. The first readings were exactly what experts feared. Toxic air, mold levels off the charts, structural instability, signs of old explosive residue. Still, the team prepared for entry. When the passage was reinforced and ventilated, the first human group descended into the Führerbunker, the first to do so since 1945. Even fully suited with breathing equipment, the moment they stepped inside, the smell hit them like a physical force, a mix of rot, dust, stagnant air, rusted metal, and something else. A cold dryness that felt ancient, like the building itself was exhaling. Corridors were half collapsed, ceiling beams sagged. Pools of black, unmoving water filled the floor in places. Some areas were so tight they had to crawl on hands and knees. It wasn't just exploring history. It was intruding on a grave. The preserved rooms. Then, suddenly, they reached them. Rooms frozen exactly as they were left in April 1945. Metal cots still in place, a cracked table, rusted utensils, a ration tin fossilized by time, a map of Berlin, peeled and faded but still clinging to the wall, and in Hitler's personal room, a simple cot, an old wool blanket, a dark stain where the head rested. Blood. The sheet was untouched. No one had dared move it in 79 years. Air quality readings were so dangerous that the team had to rotate every 15 minutes. Spores were 10 times the safe limit. Chemical traces lingered from gas, explosives, and substances the Soviets had likely used to seal the site. One historian vomited when he saw the bed. Another froze in place, shaking. A structural engineer crawled through a tight corridor into the communications room and immediately broke down, describing the experience as a descent into death. Others said the silence was unbearable. One whispered, "It feels like the building is watching us." But this was only the beginning, because what lay deeper inside would rewrite everything the world thought it knew. Inside the Führer's final rooms, what was found will shock you. As the team pushed into the deepest chambers, an eerie stillness settled over the bunker. The air felt heavier, the silence almost aggressive, as if this part of the bunker had been waiting. These rooms weren't just any rooms. They were Adolf Hitler's last environment. the final space he controlled before death swallowed the Third Reich whole. What the team found inside didn't just tell a story, it revealed a mind unraveling into madness. Behind a rusted steel door, the team found the shattered remains of what used to be Hitler's desk. The wood had splintered, parts crushed under collapsed ceiling beams. Inside a cracked drawer, they found burned paper scraps, the last pages he ever handled. On the floor, torn maps. One map of Berlin was covered in hand-drawn red pencil marks, desperate counterattacks drawn against armies that no longer existed. Another map showed a divided post-war Europe, drawn as if Hitler had already conceded defeat and was obsessively tracking what would come after his fall. Then they saw it, a portrait of Frederick the Great, Hitler's idol, smashed, tilted, glass broken inward, like it had been struck in an explosion or a violent fit of rage. But the object that froze everyone was the couch. The fabric was decayed, sunken, eaten away by mold. But near the top cushion, testers confirmed a dark, unmistakable stain. Blood. This, investigators concluded, was where Hitler and Eva Braun ended their lives on April 30th, 1945. It wasn't a throne, it wasn't ceremonial, it wasn't grand, it was messy, sudden, a violent full stop to a regime built on death. Several meters away, half-collapsed wires dangling like veins from the ceiling, the communications room still held its machinery. Burnt-out radios, fragments of receivers, a cabinet rusted shut. After prying it open, the team discovered stacks of Morse code logs, most dated between April 28th and April 30th, many stamped classified. One final message, translated, chilled every expert who read it. No departure. End procedure confirmed. A chilling confirmation. Hitler never intended to escape. He planned to die in place. On a nearby table, dented ration tins marked April 28th. A pair of cigarettes half-smoked. Wire-rimmed glasses matching Joseph Goebbels's prescription. But the worst discovery lay in a corner of the staff quarters. A small stuffed rabbit, faded, missing one ear, its fur stiff with what appeared to be dried blood. Experts believe it may have belonged to one of the 6 Goebbels children, all killed by their parents inside the bunker so they would not live in a world without National Socialism. One historian had to be escorted out after seeing it. Once catalogued, the objects were turned over to specialists, and that's when the bunker revealed something even darker. Hitler had planned his death long before the Soviets reached Berlin. Blood tests from the couch revealed cyanide barbiturates. Chemical traces found nearby matched fast-acting nerve agents brought in by Hitler's personal medical team. Psychologists studying the bunker layout noticed something disturbing. Every room was organized to perfection. Food aligned by type, furniture positioned at strict angles, documents filed even in the final hours. A historian summed it up perfectly. He maintained order inside the bunker because he was losing control of everything outside it. This obsessive behavior intensified as defeat became inevitable. Experts also analyze maps left by Hitler. Red arrows pointed to counterattacks that made no tactical sense. Handwritten notes confirmed to be Hitler's read, "Nicht überleben." They will not survive. Analysts debated for days. Was this meant for the Allies or for the German people he felt had failed him. No one could agree, and that uncertainty made the writings even more disturbing. In the final week, Hitler's notes shifted from militaristic to theological. Phrases referencing divine punishment, purification, martyrdom. The words read less like orders and more like a suicide sermon. One analyst called it a messianic spiral, a man recasting his own downfall as destiny. The most horrifying documents came from pages believed to be written by Goebbels, describing why he killed his own children. They will never live under Jewish vengeance. It wasn't fear, it wasn't panic, it was ideology, carried to its most monstrous extreme. These findings should have ended all debate about Hitler's death, but instead, they reopened the door to something even darker. Why did the Soviets hide all this? Why lie for decades? What did they gain by feeding conspiracy theories? And that leads to the next chapter, the one Stalin never wanted the world to understand. The evidence found in the bunker should have ended every conspiracy about Hitler's death forever. The blood, the maps, the personal items, the dental remains, the suicide scene preserved in the dark. But instead of confirming the truth, the Soviets did the opposite. They weaponized uncertainty. In 1945, just weeks after recovering remains believed to be Hitler's, Stalin personally told President Truman and Prime Minister Churchill, "Hitler may still be alive." He didn't whisper it. He stated it openly. Why? Because the Soviet Union gained power from mystery, from fear, from disinformation. The longer the world doubted Hitler's death, the longer the USSR could extend its influence and justify its occupation in Europe. So they suppressed the real evidence. They hid the dental fragments. They locked away skull pieces. They buried medical reports. They falsified documents. They pushed stories through state propaganda claiming Hitler fled to Spain, or Argentina, or even Japan. The world devoured these lies. Western intelligence agencies received endless sightings of Hitler. In the Andes, in Cairo, in a Spanish monastery, on a U-boat headed to Antarctica. And every time doubts began to fade, the Soviets fueled them again. The truth was simple. Hitler's death was politically inconvenient. Uncertainty was more useful. It destabilized the West. It justified Soviet secrecy. It kept the legend alive. And as the Cold War grew darker, the myth grew stronger. Dozens of Berlin civilians swore the corpse they saw near the bunker entrance didn't look like Hitler. The Soviets encouraged these testimonies. A different nose, different height, the mustache shaved. But what people didn't know at the time is that Hitler's body was burned, drenched in fuel, and barely recognizable. The Soviets exploited confusion. Even respected journalists in the 1950s questioned the story because the Soviets refused to release any forensic proof. Decades later, when the truth finally came out, experts understood. Stalin never wanted closure. He wanted a ghost with Hitler's face. In 1968, long before the fall of the USSR, Soviet officials quietly admitted they had Hitler's dental remains. Why didn't they release photos? Why didn't they allow independent experts? Why did they keep them locked away in a vault under Moscow? Simple. The myth was more powerful than the truth. It wasn't until the early 2000s, after the collapse of the Soviet Union, that Western forensic scientists were finally allowed to examine the jaw and skull fragments. Their conclusion? The remains were 100% real. matched perfectly with Hitler's dental x-rays, his dental work, his bridge, his bite pattern. That alone should have ended the mystery. And yet, decades of Soviet manipulation had permanently infected public imagination. The myth would never die. While historians tried to restore the truth, extremist groups used the conspiracies to fuel propaganda. Hitler didn't die. He escaped. He will return. Books repeated the lies. Documentaries recycled them. Forums reinvented them. A lie told once is fragile, but a lie repeated for 80 years becomes a legend. And Hitler's death became the ultimate legend of the 20th century. Experts and psychologists agree, even when evidence is overwhelming, people cling to myths because myths offer control. If Hitler escaped, the story continues. If he died in the bunker, the story ends. Human beings hate endings, especially endings that feel quiet, pathetic, and uncinematic. But that's the truth. Hitler didn't die in glory. He didn't die in a secret base. He didn't die fighting. He died in a damp concrete box, surrounded by failure and delusion, next to a couch stained with his own blood. Reality isn't dramatic, but it is final. Now that the bunker has finally been entered, the world faces an uncomfortable choice. Do we expose everything, or do we allow silence to continue shielding us from the darkest parts of our history? Historians warn, hiding the truth strengthens extremists. Avoiding the subject allows conspiracies to grow. Silence gives myths more power than facts. Some argue the bunker should become a controlled memorial like Auschwitz or the House of Terror. Others fear it would become a shrine for neo-Nazis. There is no easy answer. But one thing is clear. What was found cannot be buried a second time. The documents, the blood, the objects, the psychological evidence, they speak louder than any rumor ever could. If we lock the truth behind sealed doors again, history will repeat itself. In whispers at first, then in movements, then in tragedies. If you made it this far, you didn't just watch a video. You witnessed the true end of the most destructive dictator in modern history. Now I want to hear from you. Do you believe Hitler died in the bunker? Or do you think something still doesn't add up? Share your thoughts in the comments. And if you're still here, write bunker, so I know you watched until the end. Don't forget to like the video, subscribe, and turn on notifications. There are more true historical investigations coming, stories the world tried to bury, and truths they never wanted you to hear. Thanks for watching. See you in the next video.